What are you doing this week to save America?
Well, I am going to a prayer retreat with Christian leaders to talk about the infiltration into our churches and
Mm.
how it's impacting us at a local level in our schools, in our homes, and in our churches. And we're going to,
Infiltration, define that.
well, if you think about what's happened in our country over the last 50 years, we can go
Mhm.
back and look at it. um, there's been an infiltration, and I heard a person tell me this, and it really stuck with me. They went after the institutions with robes. They went after our justice system.
Mhm.
They wear robes. Our churches, priests wear robes. They went after our schools. When we graduate, we wear robes.
Wow.
Yeah. And so if you look at it from that perspective and you start doing the research on the strategies and tactics that they've used to infiltrate our churches and our homes and our schools and our legislative system, you see the same tactics over and over and over. And I was reading an article the other day, and they said, we're committing suicide
Mm.
through legislation, through laws. And those laws are controlling us. So I'm going to this event this weekend to share with these Christian leaders the laws that have been passed at both a federal and a state level that are completely controlling us. And it's when you look at what's happening in our schools, for instance, they're taking over the position of what our parents have been called to do. They're taking over the position of the churches. In the past, for instance, I grew up Catholic. I went to school, but my family went to church, and it was our parish community that gave me my um, social and emotional learning, not my schools, but my family and my parish that I belonged to. And that upbringing gave me a solid foundation in my faith and with my marriage and with how I raised my children. I didn't get that from school.
Right.
And so it's we're merging these they're taking over through
Yeah.
laws to separate us. And so we are going to be meeting in prayer and to discuss and talk about um, this infiltration and what are the solutions.
Mhm.
How do we take back our families? How do we take back our churches?
Right.
And so that's what we're meeting to do this weekend.
Wow. In only one weekend. Goodness.
Yeah.
I look forward to hearing from you regarding the solutions you guys come up with. I mean, you talk about social emotional learning, and you used
Mhm.
to, we used to learn that from our family, as you said, and from our church and from our community. And it seems like parents are getting so busy that we outsource that responsibility to schools. You drop them off in the morning, pick them up in the afternoon. You just assume they're doing the right thing, and they're going to handle all the social emotional learning. And oh, by goodness, they they've hijacked that, and now they change all the ways that they and the things they teach. If you can remove the 10 commandments, if you can remove prayer, if you can cloud how God defined marriage, if you can cloud how God defined man and woman, all of a sudden you discredit God, you remove him from society. There's the massive wedge. And you're right, for 50 years they've been at it, chiseling away at it, step by step by step.
Chiseling away. And it's interesting. I've been reading research that I had done in the past, and there's a letter written by a guy from the Soviet Union called the Turchenko letter, and it's called the Scientific Technological Takeover of America. And I'll be presenting this information. And in this letter, he says this will be implemented, and people will not even realize it's happening until it's too late.
Mm-hmm.
And the difference between 50 years ago when they started, and in education circles, you'll hear outcome based education. Um, we've been battling that for many years. The difference between then and now is the technology. Technology used as a tool can be a great thing. That's why we're on this podcast today, or
Yeah.
this show today. Technology used to create software programs that can modify a child's values, beliefs, and behaviors is where we're at today. And so, one of the solutions that we will be presenting is removing technology from the classroom. In the past, you went to a computer class and learned how to use the computer. You
Mm-hmm.
didn't have the computer teaching you. And when you bring in social emotional learning and a software program, that's scary because an algorithm is an opinion written into code. Whoever's writing the algorithm controls the outcome.
Right. And then combine that with the outcome based, and it's based on whose outcome, who has a preference for what outcome you're producing.
Right. And when you shift the focus in the classroom away from giving our children a solid academic reading, writing, math, and history, a foundation,
Right.
and you shift it to social emotional learning, values, beliefs, and behaviors, it's just a matter of whose values, beliefs, and behaviors. And I
Absolutely.
want to say, there's many on the right side of the aisle that I would tend to align with.
Mm-hmm.
They're all for this
Right.
because they want the access to control a child's values, beliefs, and behaviors. As a Christian, I don't think God called us to impose our faith. He calls us to propose our faith
Mm-hmm.
by the way that we live,
And invite.
by our,
Yes.
and so I think, and I know it's a controversial issue, but one of the other things that I'll be talking about this weekend is the whole school choice movement.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you look at the history and you look at the people who are implementing the scientific technological takeover of America, they are using technology, and they need access to our private schools. They need access to our home schools. And so by saying, and I tell people, I don't get the right to educate my children the way that I see fit from the state. That is an inalienable right that I have been given by God.
Mm-hmm.
To say that I need people in Austin or Washington to write laws to regulate my choices means that I'm handing my rights over to the state. That's the whole strategy and tactic that they're using.
Yes.
So we've got to be very careful in just saying we need new laws. We need new laws. Hey, let's start repealing the laws that have already been passed. Let's start actually going back to the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go back to what created the greatest nation on earth.
Yeah.
Blessed by God.
Yeah.
If we take God out, we're done.
I would say,
We're done.
95% of the people, or 98 or whatever it is, that agree with the the school choice concept, they have no clue about, as you say, the devil's in the details. And there he
Right.
is. What you're doing is you're handing over the definitions of terms to the government. And
Right.
didn't we learn that from the Department of Homeland Security? Hey, we're just going after the bad guys. We're just going after terrorists. 20 years later, who's a terrorist? Oh, mom's
It's
going to school board meetings, Catholic Church. We're going to get the FBI to start sitting in on these church services.
yes,
The devil's in the
yes.
details.
Devil's in the details, and
I say the same thing to the Christian right, the social conservatives, who for the last 30, 40 years or whatever it's been, have been begging the government, please, government, define marriage the way God did thousands of years ago. It's like, you don't need the government to do that. And all of a sudden they change the definitions.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's And I think that we need to, those of us that are in these positions like you and I, who I believe have been called to do this kind of work, I think I've been called to look at the details.
Mhm.
I've been called to do a deep dive, and I have. And so now my call is to go out and share that, and in sharing it with people who are in positions of power, who have a pulpit,
Right.
who can stand up. I think it's so important that we start. Um, we're not going to elect someone to save us.
Yes. There's only
We've
one
got to.
savior.
That's right,
Oh,
exactly.
that is
We've
awesome.
gotta
So if
save ourselves.
somebody's watching this right now and they're frustrated by what's going on, they're concerned about the future and their children in America and freedom and all of that. They're concerned. They're waiting for the next election, but they're not quite engaged yet. What would you tell them?
Number 1, I would say stop and pray,
Mm.
and understand that your children are your number 1, priority. So you need to look at where your children are, whether it's public school, private school, charter school, or even if you homeschool. And you need to do what we've had this campaign for a long time, but it works. Go in and ask 3 questions. Can I see what you're teaching my child? Can I see how you're teaching my child? What is the professional development of the teacher? What are the instructional materials that she or he is being forced to use? And number 3, can I see who's financially benefiting from the curriculum products
Mm.
on which my child's teacher is evaluated? And when you take that journey from can I
Mm.
see, which is a very weak position as a parent, can I see what you're teaching my child?
Right.
From can I see to I can see. I can see what you're teaching. I can see how you're teaching. I can see who's financially benefiting. It's not my child. And frankly, my child's teacher, not all the time, but a lot of the time, is being controlled. And so when you take that journey and you see that your individual child is being harmed, you can't be quiet. And then that will give you and meet with other people, talk to
Mhm.
other moms and dads, ask them to take that journey with you in your community. And then you start going to those school board meetings. You care about who's running your school. And frankly, if it's a traditional public school with a locally elected school board, go there.
Mhm.
If it's a Christian school and you're paying for that, you need to be asking that too. Just because it's a Christian school doesn't mean that they have not been infiltrated. Um, Homeschool curriculum, don't depend on technology to teach your child.
Yeah.
You can teach reading, writing, and math. I homeschooled our youngest, and a perfect day in our world was to go to thrift stores and find books that we could use to homeschool.
Mm.
And so there are ways you can find veteran teachers who have left the system because they've been weeded out.
Yeah.
Build a co-op and get teachers. So I think that the solution, start with your own child and build from there.
Yeah.
And then that will give you the courage to stand up and fight, because it's your family that they're going after.
Yes. God bless you, Alice. Thank you so much for joining me. We're going to have you back many, many times because I know you're extremely busy and on the front lines volunteering, saving America. Thank you. Have a great weekend this weekend. I love to
I
hear
will.
I love to hear what happens after that.
Great. Got it.
God
Thanks,
bless
Jay.
you.